It's game. All right. Now, I've taken some time because I got asked about this earlier in the day on the other live stream. I had already been preparing to talk about this. Some of you that have been here with me for some time know that I don't always like to just come out initially and talk about certain things until I kind of form my own, like, this is really what I think it is opinion. Some things I'm gonna just fly off on just because I feel I already kind of know the person. I kind of see what's going on. So I'm gonna fly off on it and I'm gonna talk about it. But in this situation, what's going on, Paul, in the live chat, we are speaking about Mercedes, DG Big Blue was popping, possibly getting caught cheating. And I want to say this. A lot of people already have speculated, and we are going to look at some video, okay? We're going to look at some video. Also, don't forget to subscribe, like, smash the like button, as Paul says. Also, super chats and buying the merch, the Purple Sectors hats and shirts also go towards me giving back to you all as the community, because you know I do that, right? I give back to the community, like these giveaways. I use the money to purchase these bundles, these giveaways to give back to you all. So this is what we're going to talk about. I'm just going to say it like it is. It does look suspicious, like straight up. It looks suspicious. That is what I'm willing to say right now. Now, I'm going to first, I want you to hear something that Toto says that I think is kind of indicting on him. And almost a little bit, I feel like almost a bit of a setup. As if this is the situation, trying to put somebody in place to be the fall guy. Because what Toto says is important to me with the context of this situation that has now come out, okay? What Toto says. Now, I'm going to play what Toto says, and I want you to listen to him speak. Because what he says in this clip, to me, is odd, it's disrespectful, and with the context of what is going on right now, whether it's true or not yet, if it is true, almost setting somebody up to take the blunt first and then maybe George second. So I'm going to play this video clip for you all to check this out, okay? So the first one I got right here is, let me see. It's right here.
Yeah, George's driving was just from another planet. He's kept that under control and managed it all the time. I think the defending against Leclerc was spectacular. And Lewis came from P10 with a super strong car, finishing just 5 seconds behind George.
Now, I think that's kind of crazy. Right? So George's driving is supernatural, out of this world, right? So just super. But Lewis from P10 to behind George in a super strong car. So let me get this right. George's driving was out of this world from the front in clean air, supernatural. But Lewis Hamilton, P10 to behind George by 5 seconds in a super strong car. Super strong car, right? Okay. So now let's take a look at what I would call the incriminating evidence, if there ever was some to be seen. We're going to take a look at the incriminating evidence. Here we go. Now, I want you to pay attention to the marks that I've set up here. I've put a yellow mark to mark or give you some orientation on the steering wheel. I've put a red circle here to give you an orientation of a fixed view that could either be light flickering off the suspension or it is a deflection of a piece moving. And I've put another marker here on the side fairing to give you an idea of how these things move. Kind of makes sense how they didn't understand why the car's so fast. Exactly. So check this out. Here we go. Now, if you pay attention here, these marks continuously, look at the steering wheel. Look at the steering wheel. Look at the red circle. Look at the blue mark. Look at those things all moving in simultaneously order. Now, if these things had happened to move outside of each other, okay? And when I say outside of each other, what I mean is if these lines, if these components happen to have been moving, not in combination, not incongruent, not in pair with each other, I would say I don't know if there's really something there. But the truth is, these things are moving with each other. They're moving in harmonious movements. It's hard. I ain't gonna lie to you. It's hard not to think that there is something there. Racer X210 says, for it being a cold track, the DOS would allow those tires to heat up faster than everyone else. Exactly, which is one of the reasons why the DOS situation was outlawed or banned. Okay, it wasn't illegal at first. People need to understand this. DOS was not illegal at first. It was a team development within gray areas. And I don't even think within gray areas, I don't think there was anything that was outlined that kept them from doing this in the way they did it, which is why they were allowed to run it throughout the season and then they banned it the following season. See, some things that come into play where they're telling you that, yo, this is so egregious, you can't use it going further, like asymmetric braking. We're initiating a regulation right now that says this is banned right now in midseason. It's not allowed. But things like DOS, the Aston Martin wing, where they built one unit but still kind of had end plates incorporated because it was all one flowing unit, was in the gray area, allowed to use to the end of the season. DOS allowed to use to the end of the season. Paul says going in and out, not turning. Yes, going in and out, not turning. And this is where some of the things come into play right here, where it is, you can see the steering wheel pushed. It's pushed forward. Clearly by that mark, the steering wheel is moving on the linear axis. It's not like his steering wheel's turning and it's moving forward. That steering wheel clearly moves forward. It clearly moves forward by that mark, okay? Now, I will say this. I think I'm saying this because I'm not sure about indicting Mercedes all the way for cheating, although it does look suspect. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. That is very true. But I will say this. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, which you tried and DOS got outlawed. But if you do it again, it's just plain cheating. There's no trying, right? It's just plain cheating. There is no trying. So I will say this, DG Big Blue. I think I need to check the regulations because I haven't looked into all the regs to see, is there a nominal amount of movement for the steering wheel? But I think the big thing in question here is this. Are you allowed to have the steering wheel move in such a way that it can articulate the toe or the camber of the suspension? All right. I think that's what it is. And then another thing is this video clear enough at this angle to say that the steering wheel is being pushed in and pulled out? Because if you go back and look at the DOS videos, when they were initiating DOS, you could clearly see the pushing movement and pulling movement of that steering wheel column. It wasn't a question. It was, you could see him push it in, you could see him pull it out. Here in this video, if you look at the steering column, it's hard to really say. It's hard to say, but I ain't going to say it doesn't look like that. I'm not going to say it doesn't look like that. And I'm keeping it a buck. If this was Red Bull, I'd be lightweight saying the same thing. And it does look like there is a push in ever so slightly. And as he is pushing, there looks to be suspension flex. Now, what I will say is this. Anthony Carrier says suspension moves exactly the same as other cars. Okay, thank you, Anthony. That's what I was finna get into this. Thank you. I was finna get there. I will say this. Those components being tied together, what if there is a bump there that caused the suspension to flex and then you just saw the translation of that through the steering column and steering wheel? I don't think that is too far-fetched to say, like, hey, there was an impact in the steering, there was a bump there or a turn there. The steering is what caused the motion of the steering wheel. There are a lot of possibilities to go here. But like I'm saying, if I'm keeping it a buck, not being biased, I can't blame people for saying that Mercedes is now in a situation where they may have been caught cheating by initiating some revision of DOS, just the same as Red Bull. Adrian Newey bringing back asymmetric braking in a very more innovative way, but clearly caught, but not outed for it. I can't blame people if they might feel that way. Paul says his head moves forward and back with the wheel. I don't know. And Paul, that's what I'm like. It's a very gray, murky area. I've watched the onboard. I've tried to see if it happened multiple times in the turns, because you have to know DOS was something that they did initiate in and out of turns. I believe that's when it was most impactful, not so much on the straights. But still, that's not to say that they couldn't have revised the use of DOS in some way here, knowing the track's going to be cold, knowing the tires are going to need to be heated up somewhat. Anthony Carrier says people have been noticing this all year. And to Anthony Carrier's point, right, this was something that we realized in Flexi Wings. Watched it all year, wasn't a big deal until cars started performing to a level where now it's like, oh, no, we need to go ahead and petition that, right? It was the same thing with DOS. Saw it, and then kind of like started bringing it up. DG Big Blue says, if the car passed the post-race inspections, get the hell out of here, right? Also, let's just say this, because like I said, this is another reason why I'm not really sure about this being cheating, because Formula One and the FIA are already very familiar with DOS previously. This is not something that would be new to them. This is not something that they would be not noticed if this is the case. These cars are inspected. These cars are inspected. They're gonna be heavily looked at. Now, of course, we know there was a situation in Texas where they looked at some cars, but they didn't look at all the cars. So how do you know all the other cars' planks weren't worn? Maybe that could happen. What I'm saying is this. It's open. It's open. I think that this is actually something that may look like it's not. I think that this could possibly be a clear explanation for why somebody might be seeing this. But I also think this, Mercedes, is not uncommon this season for Mercedes to be fast in these type of environments on these type of tracks a few times throughout this season. The car has been very temperamental. The car has been a car that they haven't been able to completely dial in circuit to circuit. Usually stars align, planets line up, and Mercedes performs. And everybody knew in these colder conditions, the W15 performs better. In circuits like this, Mercedes has shown to be a bit stronger. Now, all of a sudden, okay, Mercedes is fast all through the weekend, F1, F2, FP2, FP1, FP3, Q1, Q2, Q3, and even in the race, now this is a situation. Now it's a problem. Could this just be a witch hunt of the fact that there might be some light at the end of the tunnel because Mercedes might be getting closer to developing a competitive car for the championship? Yeah, it could be. It could be. It very could be, much could be. I think I can't say that they're cheating. I don't think this is clear enough to say that Mercedes is cheating. This is just how I feel. But I'm also being very objective to people that may feel like, did they just bring back a component in a car that was previously outlawed in a revision back then? I can't clown people for feeling that way based on what you're seeing. Yeah, I'm just saying it's very clear that there's some movement in the steering wheel. How much movement is nominal for the steering wheel? It's very clear that same movement at the same time is happening through the suspension and the fairings where the wheels are. Is all of that tied together? So is it the wheels itself that causes movement, or is it the steering wheel that is now a control device that is allowing the drivers to potentially change the angle of the suspension? Just saying. No, I'm just saying, because you can clearly see that there is movement. If you look at this blue marker, that fairing moves in and out. At the same time the steering wheel moves forward, that fairing moves out. That's not even a question. You can clearly see it. Watch the letters on the steering wheel where the yellow marker is. Look at the blue line. It clearly moves simultaneously. That's not even up for question. Look in that red circle and look at that flicker of light. It clearly moves at the same time as the steering wheel and the fairing. Look at it. But also, I would like you to pay attention to something. Look at George Russell's helmet. Look how he moves forward. If he's pushing the steering wheel to move it forward, it's not a natural movement for his head to also come forward. It would be pressed back into the seat because you are putting pressure on something like this. Okay, I'm just trying to be objective. If you're pushing a steering wheel like this, if I'm pushing something like this, I'm going back. I'm not finna come forward to push something and I got a harness on. Now, is it more likely that George Russell is pushing something like this and bringing his body forward? Or is it likely that the car hits something, causing George to move forward a bit, pushing pressure? Is that not more likely? It's more likely to me that he hits something in the road, which causes him to come forward, his body to come forward. His hands are braced on the steering wheel, and he comes forward, and all of that is almost the same motion because the car is going through a characteristic on the track. That's almost more likely, in my opinion, than the latter. Just keeping it a buck. That's more likely, in my opinion, is that George hits something or the car hits some type of dip, bump in the track. He bumps forward. Everything goes forward because if you're pushing on the steering wheel, you're not bringing yourself forward to push the steering wheel. You're just going to move your hands in and out, which is what we saw with Das. So George's movement, to me, does not explain that. Look at how his helmet comes forward. I don't know why his helmet would need to come forward like that if he's pushing on something, bringing it up. I don't know, unless it's a different movement of this device, if there even was a device. So yeah, I'm just saying, I don't know. I just know, I will say this. What Toto said here to me is kind of ridiculous and to me almost keeps going in line that Toto is in his BS bag as far as highlighting George Russell and not minding the exit of Lewis Hamilton. Because when you can say something like this, another planet,
control and managed it all the time. I think the defending against Leclerc was spectacular.
Spectacular,
and Lewis
but
came from P10
Lewis Hamilton,
with a super
P10
strong car,
with a super strong car.
Finishing just 5 seconds behind George.
That to me, that's what I call a backhanded compliment. I call that a backhanded compliment on the real. I do. So you let me know. By the way, big shout out. Paul says head moving forward may be due to braking and back on throttle. Paul, there's another legitimate explanation, brother. Another legitimate explanation, which would then explain the forward moving of the body because you're braking, so forces are changing. Just like anybody in the car, you know, sometimes I brake check my wife when she talk, I brake check her. You're braking and coming forward, and everything flexes. I'm just saying that's a legitimate explanation as well, my brother. That's what I'm saying. Like maybe people are trying to make too much of this. Maybe people are trying to make this something that is really not yet. And I just gotta say, I would find it an indicting situation if the FIA and Formula One had previously already had an experience with Mercedes and DAS device, and then you come here and for some reason you let it fly under the radar until now. That would be you would need to lose your job. You would need to lose your job. I mean, some of you all need to lose your job anyway with a lot of other things going on this season. But I'm just saying, you definitely would lose my vote to keep your job, not paying attention to something that we've already been through before. So I'm not sold on Mercedes cheating. I am objective about people saying that it's a possibility based on what we're seeing, possibly. But I'm not sold on it. I think it's really just something. I think it's the braking characteristics of the car, maybe the track, and just these things happen. They all are going to go through that same. They're all going to be impacted the same time in the same similar way and make movements at that same time. So unless it comes out that Mercedes has been caught cheating, because if this is out here, you got to know the FIA, if they missed it then at the track and didn't inspect it, they're going to be on the lookout for it now. Like where's the car? We need to see it. So I don't think something this big goes unnoticed or goes uninspected, especially with a team like Mercedes. I just don't, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying it. But if it does, it's crazy because I got to keep it a buck. If it was Red Bull, I'd be saying there's some suspect stuff, but I would have to break it down the same and say, like, I ain't too sure about that based on sometimes the most simple explanation is exactly what it is more than something being complex and all intricate and all this other stuff. But it's not out of question. I'll say that. It's not out of question at all. And like I did say, this is why I'm telling you that I can't fully rule it out that it's not something like that, because if you pay attention to the steering wheel and you pay attention to, I think it's going to be more camber than it's toe. All right. Cause toe is, I'm going to say this, cause toe is this way. All right. Camber is this way. And if you pay attention to what goes on here, this is why I can't blame people if they're saying this, because look at the steering wheel, look at the top of that wheel. It's ever so slightly, but it is there. It is there. All right. So let me know what you all think below in the comment section. Let me know what you all think, how you feel about it, where you sit on it. I'm not sold that it's cheating. I think there's a better explanation for it, just because of we're looking at George's body placement as things move, but I'm not completely out on if it is something fishy going on, because there clearly is movement on the steering wheel, suspension, and that fairing, which does change angle a bit. So I'm not out on that, but I'm not too sold on it yet. So we will see what happens. We'll see what they come up with. We'll see where they go from here. So until then, Wolfpack Performance out. See y'all later.